Hi, Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog. Let's talk about common leasing objections. Things consumers say to a salesperson when a salesperson presents a lease. First of all, the main reason customers don't lease is because the salesperson doesn't know how to adequately explain the benefits of leasing to a customer. The salesperson doesn't know how to adequately overcome the customer's objections. Let's look at a couple common objections that you might hear when you are presenting a lease and the better word tracks that you could use to say to the customer to ease their fears. First of all, leasing is not for everybody. But truthfully, most customers would benefit greatly from leasing. You're actually doing them a service. Now, the leases we do today are closed-end leases with option to purchase. General Motors invented that concept in 1982 when they introduced the smart lease. Before 1982, there was only two kinds of leases, open-end and closed-end. Closed-end lease, you had to walk away. You had no option. You could not continue owning the car. Now, the open-end lease, no matter what that residual was set at, you were obligated to pay it. And then in 1982, General Motors comes up with a smart lease, and then everybody started doing it. Now we're off to the races. A closed-end lease, hybrid with option to purchase. And that's what we have today. A closed-end lease, walk away with option to purchase. But don't be saying option to purchase to the consumer. Consumers are already skittish about leasing when you're overcoming objections. Don't ever use the word buy the car. Don't tell them they can buy the car. No, because that was their main objection in the beginning. The number one objection you hear to leasing is, Mr. Ziegler, I don't like to rent a car, and that's what leasing is. Leasing is renting. I've always owned my cars. How many times have you heard that? I've always owned my cars. And with most customers, you can do a little research and use this objection overcoming technique. Mr. Customer, I have researched your history. And truthfully, you have always traded your cars in with a balance. You financed your cars and never paid them off. You traded them in before you paid them off. You have never owned a car. The bank always owned the car because you never paid it off. But with a lease, you have guaranteed future value. Everybody listen to what I just said. I didn't invent that word track. That's an old word track, but it is so effective. Mr. Customer, a lease has guaranteed future value. Let me explain to you how that works. First of all, we have an estimate, computer-generated estimate that tells us what we believe that car is going to be worth 3.5 years from now. So 3.5 years from now, we believe that car is going to be worth, and I'm going to use an example, $30,000. So Mr. Customer, we believe that car is going to be worth $30,000, so we don't make you pay for that. We set that $30,000 aside. And 3.5 years from now, you can make a decision whether you want to continue ownership and pay the $30,000, and we'll guarantee financing. Or you can walk away clean. Mr. Customer, let's pretend that we get near the end of the lease and that $30,000 at the end is coming due. You call your banker or your personal advisor, and your personal advisor says, $30,000? That car is only worth $22,000. We made a mistake. We thought it was going to be worth $30,000. It's only worth $22,000. As a smart consumer, you're going to walk away and not pay the $30,000. If it takes a loss, we eat it. With your retail installment contract, you have been several times what we in the business call upside down. You owed more on your car than it was worth, and you were responsible for it. With a lease, however, if the residual is out of whack and the residual is more than the car's worth, you don't pay it. You walk away. We eat the loss. But if it has a profit, say you call your personal advisor, your banker, and your banker says, $30,000 residual, that car's worth $35,000. You have the guaranteed future value. You have the right to own that car for $30,000, and the $5,000 equity is yours. You can pay the $30,000. We'll guarantee financing, and as long as you paid your payments well, we'll guarantee financing. But you can walk away if it's too much, or you can continue owning it. And that $5,000 equity, if that car's worth $35,000 and we set the residual at $30,000, you own the equity. You can sell the car and pocket the equity, or you can use that equity in an exchange on your next vehicle, because that's the third option. Option number one, you can walk away with no continuing obligation. You can walk away. If that car is not worth what we said it was going to be worth, you can walk away. Option number two, you can continue ownership. Notice I did not say buy the car. You can continue ownership. You have the right to continue ownership, guaranteed financing if you paid your payments as agreed. You can continue ownership for $30,000. Knowing that car's worth $35,000, if that's the case. Or, as most people do, you can exchange that vehicle every 3.5, 4 years for a newer car, and your payments will go up, listen to this, your payments will go up no more than inflation. You see, Mr. Customer, your payments will go up an aggregate of the increased cost of financing, if that's the case, and the increased cost of the car. Your payments are locked into the inflation of the increased cost of the car and increased financing. So you're locking in your payments. They'll go up no more than inflation. Every 3.5, third year, fourth year, whatever the residual term is, you can upgrade to a newer car that is still under warranty. Now think about that. The most expensive time to own a car is after 30,000 miles. In the first 3 years of a car's lifetime, repairs are minimal. But there are things like replacement items, wear and tear items, rubber hoses, belts, alternators, water pumps, tires, McPherson strut suspension. There's any number of things that can fail after the first 3 years. You're not responsible for those things. You're driving a newer car in great shape for the term of the lease, and you've got no continuing obligation. Or you can continue ownership if you really like the car. Or you can walk away, you can continue ownership, or you can exchange every third or fourth year for a newer car. Still under warranty. The wear and tear items and the failure items haven't happened yet. What a great deal. Your payments will go up no more than inflation. Rather than the retail deal, if that car is not worth the residual amount of the balance when you trade it in, what we call in the business upside down, you're responsible for upside down. You have paid that overage on your balance a couple of times from looking at your history. So, Mr. Customer, you own the car unless you decide not to. You own the car unless you decide not to. You have a walkaway option, or you have the option of continued ownership if you made your payments as agreed. All we require is you keep the car cosmetically and mechanically sound. Do your required maintenance. Keep the car insured. There's less money going into a lease, certainly. And it's a shorter commitment. And many leases include gap insurance. Now, gap is the amount, if you had a wreck or you had a theft, and all of a sudden your insurance company comes into play and the car is not worth book value. You are, with most insurance companies, required to pay the difference between book value and the payoff. So most lease companies insure against that with a gap policy. And the ones that don't, a gap policy is available at a very nominal charge. So think about that. You've got included gap in most of them. Well, Mr. Ziegler, I'm a high mileage driver. Oh, you're in luck. I'm an insurance agent. I drive my car all over town. I'm a real estate agent. I drive my car 40,000 miles a year. Leasing is not for me. You drive your car 40,000 miles, leasing is your best bet. First of all, a number of lease companies will adjust the residual to include your mileage overage in your monthly payment. And you want to have that upside downness when you go to trade it in. If you're driving a car 40,000 miles a year and you're trading in, you are upside down, and the hit in the book when we trade it in, leases are usually 15 to 25 cents a mile overage. The difference is tremendous. The leasing is much cheaper for overage mileage than you would get hit on a trade-in. Mr. Customer, those are some of the things about leasing that we need to tell the customer. We need to tell the customer these things. Just a couple tips from the Alpha Dog.